It's Two on the Aisle with me, Charles Gross, and Leslie Hoban Blake. Tonight, reviews of The End of Longing, The Government Inspector, Cost of Living, The Whirligig, Terezine, Bella, Venus, and 0 Hour. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Two on the Aisle. Good evening, Leslie.
Well, good evening. It's actually late afternoon,
yes.
But we're outdoors.
Here we are in Times Square in a hot summer day with our Play That Goes Wrong fans.
Very nice of them to come along and give us these fans.
Yes. Unlike the play itself, where everything collapses, these fans are actually holding up and doing a good job. So we've got a lot to talk about today.
Yes, and we're going to try to get it done in time.
So this is The End of Longing by and starring Matthew Perry, who's probably best known from Friends and just completed The Odd Couple on television.
Right.
It also stars Jennifer Morrison, who
was just on Once Upon a Time.
Right, she just finished,
Wonderful.
I think, her 6th season. And I believe Once Upon a Time is coming back next year, but she will not be with
She'll
it.
be a visitor.
Right.
She'll come back.
And let's see, how do we do this? Okay, he's an alcoholic photographer.
That's a good
She's
start.
a $2,500 an hour call girl. They hook up in a bar, and it goes from
hilarity
there.
ensues, but sobriety does not, and that's the problem. Because he is an alcoholic, and he's happy to be an alcoholic, and he doesn't want to change, which is a story of many well-known people, including Matthew Perry himself. He says that this is his story, as well as it could be Robert Downey Jr.'s. No, Robert Downey Jr.'s story. Anyone who's been on that kind of binge and doesn't want to come back, and they make a pact, and the pact. She says to him, "All right, it's me or the booze." And I mean, and they get along.
That's their second pact.
Yes.
Now that's her ultimatum. The pact initially is they don't talk about the booze or her profession.
Right. And
Until, of course, they do.
Right, and then they get along very well. And I must say, Jennifer Morrison was the find for me in this. She's gorgeous to look at. She's funny, and she reminds me of a contemporary Carol Lombard, somebody who has that ability to be funny and yet be beautiful.
She was also on How I Met Your Mother. She was Zoe.
Oh, I didn't know that. I never really watched that show. So to me, Once Upon a Time was it. And she's very serious on that show. So this was quite an eyeful, and she is an eyeful.
Yes, she is.
Matthew Perry did a very, I don't know what the right word is, he did a good job of writing up until the end. What he does is he's good at dialogue. He writes decent dialogue, whether it's believable or not is something else, but at least he has people talking to each other, and they talk in 2 or 3 different voices, which is what's hardest about playwriting. But then he gets to the end, and up until that point I was with him, and then he gets to the end wherein he has to make this choice, and he decides to go to AA. And I think that was the curtain. He makes his choice, he decides to go to AA. He had to give himself a dramatic monologue, which suddenly made the play go whomp into please help me, I'm this. All he had to do is say, please help me, or I'm here, or I need you, or I want you to do something. And, instead he did, I'm this, I'm that, and that's when he lost me.
Okay. But that's at the very end of the play. And until then, you were enjoying yourself.
I was enjoying
There
the
are
play.
also 2 other characters. Each of them has a friend.
Yes.
Perry's friend is this kind of well-meaning but schlubbish. He wanted to be a firefighter, but he found that he's afraid of fires.
Right. Quincy Dunbaker is his name.
Right.
And Sue Jean Kim is Jennifer Morrison's friend.
Right. Totally neurotic, totally desperate to have a baby.
It's lovely.
And she gets her wish.
Right, she gets her wish. And it's lovely to see her getting to do this kind of comedic role. She's a wonderful young actress, and I've worked with her, and she's really terrific.
Right.
So,
all in all, enjoyable, not overly taxing.
No.
Interesting
set that went around and around as the play goes around and around,
Right. Enjoyable, and I'm sure anyone who's a fan of either Perry or Morrison should definitely rush to see it because you will enjoy seeing them on stage. All in all, I would give it 3 playbills.
I'd give it 3.5, actually. I
like it a
enjoyed
little
it that
better.
much. Yeah, and if it didn't go womp, I might have given it a 4, I will
Really,
say
that much?
This is Manhattan Class Company, and they're just about to build, if you've read that article in the Times I sent you, they're just about to start building on their first ever, their own theater. So this was at the Lucille Lortel, but in 2 years they'll have their own place.
Well, that's exciting.
Very exciting.
Okay. Moving on.
Well, we can move on to the Government Inspector.
The Government Inspector.
Which has just moved on. It is going to spend the summer at New World Stages, which I think is a wonderful place for it, and I think it's a wonderful show for the summer. It's light, it's airy. it's hard to say that it's goggle, and you don't think of him as being light and airy, but it's a
Actually,
comedy.
yes, I do.
Well, they made this really work. They went full on Marx Brothers. It stars Michael Urie, who of course is near and dear to the heart of everyone in the drama desk because he has been our host at our parties this year. I didn't get to go, but you did. The second year, and he's got Arnie Burton and Michael McGraw and Mary Testa at the top of the list
Yes.
of people, and then more other wonderful actors as well. But that's the top of the list, and just great fun. If you remember the Danny Kaye movie, The Inspector General.
I actually never got to see it. I have seen Government Inspector before, and I'm looking at it. The plot is basically a corrupt Russian town where corruption runs rampant. They hear that a government inspector is coming, so they have to prepare to put on a good face for him. Now, the character played by Urie is not the government inspector,
No.
but he is mistaken, and he proves that he can sink to the occasion.
Well,
and he does.
He's a guy who's out of money, out of funds.
Right.
Has to run from the town he was in, and accidentally gets there just at the right moment.
Yes.
And he's absolutely willing to do anything, to get
Absolutely.
whatever they want to give
And
him.
I'll tell you, I loved him in Buyer and Seller. I thought he was superb hosting the drama desk
There's
this
going to be
year.
a butt here. I can hear it coming.
Yeah, and I'm sitting and I'm watching the cast and they're getting ready and they're all set and it's hilarious and I'm waiting and I know because Michael Urie's going to come on and it's going to be so much more amazing, and it isn't, at least not for me. I saw him, he's clowning around, he's energetic, he's all over the place, but I'm sitting there and I'm just not enjoying myself.
I thought he was adorable. I thought he was funny as hell.
He is definitely adorable. Was he funny?
A
No.
rubber man. He felt they had
Yes.
a double-decker stage, and he fell from the top stage to the bottom stage.
He did.
And he did that twice a day on Saturdays.
Mhm.
And I wanted to say a word about Jeffrey Hatcher, who did the adaptation.
Jeffrey Hatcher.
Jeffrey Hatcher is a playwright, and we know a lot of Jeffrey Hatcher's plays and screenplays as well. And I give him a credit the way David Ives has done for a lot of the French plays. Jeffrey did for this one, bringing it into a contemporary tone
Right.
without spoiling what it's about.
Yeah,
I disagree with you about about Michael, but that's a question of taste, I guess.
I think so, and this is something I came in and I really expected to be enjoying it, being a fan of Urie, knowing the type of shtick, and having just seen him, at the drama desk doing so beautifully in here, and I could admire his talent, I could admire his effort, but at the end of the day, I wasn't laughing. At the end of the day, I just felt very bland. And at the end of the day, while I enjoyed the rest of the cast, I didn't enjoy him. And if you don't enjoy him, you're really not going to enjoy the play.
I guess I enjoyed him
and
enough for both
I
of
am
us.
only going to give it 2.5 playbills.
I laughed until I cried. Honestly, I did. And I will give it 4.5 to make up for yours because
All right.
I think I think moving it was a brilliant thing to do. And I have to say something about the Red Bull Theatre, which is the company that put this on. They have been doing the classics with Jesse Berger, who's their artistic director, and they get better and better and better. And now that they're not at St. Clement's with all the stairs, I can go see them. So I'm very happy about that. Okay.
Well, this is a play by one of Leslie's favorite contemporary. I wouldn't say up and coming because I think he's probably arrived. At
He's
least Leslie would
arrived,
say
yes.
so. This is also well known as an actor, Hamish Linklater.
And I've seen him as a playwright before.
Yes, we have. We both have. And this is the Whirligig. And this is also starring Norman Leo Butts, who I haven't seen in a while and was very happy to see on stage. And this is basically two divorced parents who are dealing with the imminent death of their daughter as a result of drugs. It's not an overdose. It's just the years have taken their toll.
Well, she's another one, not unlike Matthew Perry in the first place. She likes her drugs. She has had opportunities to get off them. She doesn't.
Well, we
want to get off
don't
them.
really know that.
We get to meet her. That's what the Whirligig is. The whole roundabout, which is what a Whirligig is. The stage is on a turntable, and everybody walks from scene to scene, and we walk from the past to the present and back again. And she's always on stage. Sometimes she's lying in the hospital bed. Sometimes she gets up and interacts with the rest of the characters.
Right.
And everybody is interacted in some way, is interconnected rather in some way.
Yes,
We find out
including the doctor,
Yes.
including a friend,
Yes.
including her best friend. Again,
in ways that we find out as the play
right,
goes
and
on.
it can be a little confusing because the play has a tendency to time travel a lot. It goes from present to past and back.
Well, once you get
And
the fact that it's doing that, I think it's
it does get easier, but it does take a while. And until the end, where everything is explained,
Right.
it can be a little confusing at times. Nonetheless,
I did want to mention that Zasia, I hope that's the way you say her name, Mamet from Girls, has as a part of her best friend. And the her we're talking about is a young woman by the name of Grace Van Patten. She plays Julie, and she's the young girl in question. And,
right.
Is her mother
What
and
I
father.
miss in the play, we see how she gets started on drugs.
Right.
We see how
Well, we
she
don't
is.
see that until we know she's on drugs.
Right.
That's
Well, we
part
know
of
we know that it was.
Right.
We know that whatever her illness is, and it's apparently incurable. We don't actually see her die, but we know she's going to. And we see how she gets on drugs. We don't quite see her deterioration. A lot of that is left to the imagination to fill in the blanks. I would like to know a little more, because it doesn't seem to me that her life was such that she should fall into an addiction
She had well, the whole idea here is, this is what
and
they're
not be
talking
able
about,
to get out of it.
about opioid and other addictions around the country. This is a perfectly normal. Well, all right, they're not normal. Norbert Butz is a quasi-alcoholic himself, and the mother and father are not exactly Ozzie and Harriet, but she has a mother. She has
Ozzie
a
and
father.
Harriet weren't Ozzie and Harriet.
That's
She
true.
has a family. She has a support.
Right, she has
system.
a support system, and
she
it
had a-
doesn't work. It's not enough.
Right,
The
and
drugs
we
are
never
stronger.
know why. And
Well, I
to
don't
an
think
extent,
you ever do know why. That's the whole point. There isn't always
Maybe.
an exact reason. That's
Maybe.
the whole thing. I mean, kids are dying all over America every single day, coming from homes with families, and you think it's not just on New York street corners and in
Right.
minority places.
And again, this isn't a sudden overdose. This is something prolonged. She's being treated. It's happening
every
over.
time she leaves the treatment for the drugs. That's
Right.
that's
Well,
the
no,
problem.
but she doesn't. We don't see that. We don't know that.
We do. There's a scene in
We
which
do?
she does. Yeah, there's a scene in which she
Okay.
does. One of those where she walks back and forth.
I may have missed that scene. Again, the play skips around quite a bit.
I did want
But
to mention,
I did not see that, or I don't recall
It's
seeing
there.
that. So
It's there.
it's not done for me. It was not done
Okay,
clearly.
well, that I did want to say
Nonetheless-
it's a new group and it's directed by Scott Elliott, and
Right.
those two things are very good. They like to do edgy plays. It's an edgy play.
And they-
It's edgy, but it's also funny, and
and entertaining,
And then-
and it works.
and then she dies.
Yeah. Well, we assume
not
she's
giving
going to
anything
die.
away, right,
We
yeah.
assume she will die. She doesn't
Yeah.
actually die in the play,
Right.
but we assume she will. So it's very sad in that
Right.
matter.
Right.
And
But that's like life, isn't it? I mean, sometimes you're smiling and sometimes somebody dies. I
Right.
mean, that's the way life goes.
so. What will you give it?
I would give it 3.75.
I concur.
Okay.
I concur.
That's nice. I'm glad we did that. So now you're coming up with
I am coming up with the cost of living.
fascinating. We just saw this. Fascinating.
Yes, we just saw this. This is at Manhattan Theatre Club, and
Directed by Joe Bonney, and that's
Yes.
the only name involved in it that I know from any time before.
Well, it is basically 4 people. 2 are severely handicapped,
Severely.
and the other 2 are taking care of them.
Right.
Now, it starts amazingly strongly. You didn't like Matthew Perry's monologue at the end of
Right. This monologue
end
was
of Longing.
stupendous.
But Victor Williams' monologue
Got
at
a
the end
round
of The
of
Cost
applause.
of the Living is the highlight of the play. He's in a bar. He tells us about his situation, and it's amazing. And unfortunately, as far as I am concerned, the play did not keep up with that level. Now we see Victor carry on for his girlfriend, wife, not quite, and she's been in an accident, I believe. She's lost both her legs,
Yeah.
and her arm isn't working so well. So he is there. He takes care of her, and then we see another couple. Well, not a couple. John and Annie. John is also severely handicapped, probably cerebral palsy or something like that. Fortunately, he's very well-to-do, and he hires Annie to take care of him, which means washing, which she actually does on stage, dressing him, shaving him,
And Annie is a
etc.
minority a person, and
Yes.
and she works in bars, and she's living from hand to mouth.
Right.
And she's the kind of person who, the minute that next paycheck doesn't come in, the apartment's gone, and this is exactly what
Right.
happens to her.
And we
while
know
this is
she
going
went to a
on.
prestigious college. She has a degree.
Exactly. and she's
We don't
very-
know why she hasn't been able to do
Well,
anything with it.
because
It does happen.
It happens to a
It
lot
does
of
happen.
people.
Yes,
That's the thing.
absolutely, absolutely.
And so he hires her, and they become friendly and there's an evening when he's getting ready. He invites her to the house for the evening, and she comes all dressed up, bringing wine, thinking it's a date, and he wants her to get him ready for his date
Right.
with someone else. And it crushes her. It just crushes her.
And then we also shift over to see Eddie and Josh, and it kind of shifts back and forth. And
Well, and then of course at the very end we get the gentleman from the beginning,
right,
whose wife is
Right, Eddie.
Eddie.
well, whose wife has died, but
Yes.
there seems to be, because in one other scene we have seen him bathing her. Basically, the
Oh,
scene
that
that
was
they
a
have
stunning
together, we see
scene.
them taking care of each other.
There's a scene where he's bathing her. She's a woman without legs,
Right.
and she's in the tub, and he's bathing her, and they're talking to each other. He walks away to get something, and she slips under the water. And there's a gasp. Part of it was mine, but there's a gasp throughout the audience because you think, oh my God, she's going to drown. She can't get out, and then you count. You start counting. How long can she stay underwater? And you're so involved in that when he comes in, it's like an exhalation of, oh, thank God.
Well,
you know?
to me, it was scary because it reminded me of something happened with my daughter, with
Oh.
Miriam.
Oh.
When she was
Oh.
an infant, I was bathing her, and she fell off her seat
Ah.
into the tub, and I grabbed her. Yeah, you. Miriam is here.
She's our
She's
camera
our
person
camera
today,
person.
yes. Oh,
You
very
would not remember this, sweetie. You were a baby. And it seemed like she was there for an eternity, but actually it was just like a second or two because I reached right
No,
in and I
this was
grabbed
not
her.
a second or two. This was a good minute or more
Well,
of stage
but-
time with nothing happening except we know that
right.
woman is underwater.
And again, it was a strong scene, but to me, it was gimmicky. You have the handicapped people, and they played the handicap and taking care of the handicap over the character development for me. Too much time shaving, too much time bathing, and not enough
I thought
time.
that was the character development while they were she was shaving and they were talking. While
yes,
they were bathing, they
yes.
were talking. So I
But
felt that was what
to
I thought
me,
it was a good way of integrating that.
It was, but the dialogue to me was not strong enough
Uh-huh.
to integrate it.
Okay.
And there also seems to be, at one point we know that the woman who's in the bathtub has died.
Yes. Well, in the beginning, he talks about she's dead
Right.
already, and then we
But-
go back.
And then they flash back and then they bring it up to after
Right.
she's died. And that gets a little confusing because
you get confused when we have flashbacks. I see that. Because
I
we had
get
the same thing
confused where they leave,
where you don't think
where
it's
they
clear
leave
enough.
parts of the puzzle out, and to my mind,
Yeah.
they don't make it. I mean, yes,
I'm good at making
I
jumps.
understand
I
it,
can leap with them usually.
but I'm saying, wait, you left a part out. You left the part out between where they're bathing and where she dies and where he and Annie,
I
the other
understand.
woman,
I understand what you're
get
saying.
together.
I don't need you to.
And I felt, they use actually handicapped people playing the roles. They're not as handicapped as their characters.
They are. The young woman at the end who is legless comes out with
Right,
two,
but her arms work and she can walk with prosthetics, which I don't think her stage counterpart can. Also,
well,
she has
she's in a
arms.
wheelchair. Yes.
She has arms.
Okay.
She's not. And
Okay.
it's great, but taking away this, and I have to call it a gimmick. I felt the play was not as strong.
Okay.
Just going on
you're
it as a
You're
play.
going to yell at me, but this is again we come to Trump and the health care bill that's going on right now. These people are all needing a Medicaid and well, not the rich guy obviously, but the woman who's working for him, and the woman who is legless, and the man who's taking care of her husband. Those people are all in need of Medicaid and all of the help that is being taken away by this horrible bill. So I thought that this was the most timely play that I had seen in forever. And
Again.
I know it wasn't written yesterday. I mean, obviously it was written before this
But
happened.
when I go to a play, first and foremost, I have to enjoy the play. I'm not interested in the political statement. Do I like plays that make a political statement? If they're good plays. Major Barbara by Shaw makes a political statement. Pygmalion
Well, the
makes a
Julius
political
Caesar that you're
statement,
gonna talk
but they're
about in a
great
minute.
plays.
But okay.
And that's
well,
where it counts.
I didn't
How
feel
many
it was a
playbills?
great play. I felt it certainly merited. And I will say just one thing about the fact that the handicapped person in Glass Menagerie
Okay,
was a
we're
gimmick.
looking on
But
time.
the handicapped person in Glass Menagerie was a gimmick,
Okay.
whereas this was a play
Leslie,
about the handicap.
your conclusion.
That was my conclusion. That this is a play about the handicap.
How many playbills?
I would give it 3.75.
All right, I would give it 3.25, maybe 3.5, but more or less. I think 3.25.
Okay.
All right, moving on, and we have to move on real quickly.
All right, where are we going? Am I doing this and you're doing Julius Caesar?
Well, I think we have to talk about Terezine.
Okay, fine.
Okay.
I don't want to, as you know.
All right, well, we're going to have to.
All right, well, talk about it.
Okay, now this is play World War II. Terezine was a concentration camp. Terezine, excuse me. But it was a gussed-up concentration camp.
It was put together for the Red Cross to see how well the Germans were treating the
Jews.
The Jews. Thank you.
And they would dress it up, make it look like everything is fine, and of
So
course...
they brought all the musicians there. They brought all the artists there. They had plays put on. They had an orchestra. They had a chorus until they got their clean bill of health from the Red Cross.
And then they were all shipped to Auschwitz.
Right.
And this concentrates on the commandant and, to a lesser extent, two young women, two young girls who are there. One of them is the daughter of a prominent violinist. The commandant was a big fan of her mother. The mother dies very quickly after she comes to the camp. And ultimately, he wants the daughter to teach him the violin. And the daughter, and this woman has a friend, another young woman, and we see her story. But the interesting thing is the strongest characters are the commandant, his son, who we find out is actually Jewish, and well, that's pretty much the play. The play starts with the girls, but quickly moves away from them.
The play starts with a family being killed.
Right.
In front of your eyes.
Right. It is stark and it is blunt.
It is stark and blunt, and then it begins to beat you over the head with what you already know.
Right.
You come into a play about a concentration camp, you pretty much know how the story is going to go. Do you need to see every detail of the horror, or do you want to get a human story in there somewhere? I felt that that the human stories were ignored over the almost grand guignol effect, and it was done without blood, but nonetheless the grand guignol effect of dying and punishment and terrible people doing terrible things. And I left at intermission. I understand from your daughter Miriam that I should have stayed because the second act was better and more filled with character development, but I just couldn't handle it.
It was, but I
sorry.
actually liked the first act better because I felt the starkness was warranted. You don't see that very often, even in a Holocaust production, but
there was
it was there because that's how it was. And I think it is good that occasionally a production dealing with this subject shows the starkness, shows the horror, and does really go full force.
There was a play called The Gray Zone that was the most horrifying play I have ever been party to. And then it was made into a film, which is even more horrifying. And trust me, I have seen it done on stage better. That's all I wanted to say. With all the horror, and there are ways of showing the horror and making you feel it without going, die. Anyway, I would give it 2 for the fact that they went to a lot of trouble.
I would go more. I would go 3 with it. Very strong. Again, the problem is it maybe concentrates more on the Germans or on the Nazis than it does on the prisoners.
I didn't even feel
and at the expense of them. And these characters who you start off with, who you expect to be following, you don't get to. And I did feel that the second act started again. I know Miriam liked it better. I liked the first act better.
Okay.
Even though they were trying to do more character development in the second act.
I do apologize.
And I will give it 3 playbills. Yes.
I do apologize to everybody for leaving, but I blame it on what you did. So forgive me. There's only so much a human being can take.
Okay. It's 2 on the aisle.
So it's my turn, and I'm doing a double feature because they're on a similar theme. This is Venus by Suzanne Laurie Parks, the story of Sarah Bartman, the Venus Hottentot. And this is a totally fictitious story at Playwrights Horizons called Bella, an American Tale by Kirsten Childs, who just made up she's the bubbly black girl who made up the story, and that's her own tag. The Venus Hottentot is a true story about the first time that people in Europe and America ever saw a live African female of a particular tribe that had a very large buttock, a protuberant buttock.
So junk in the trunk.
Junk in the trunk. But I mean totally a lot of junk in the trunk. And the play features...
this is Suzanne Laurie Parks.
It's Suzanne Laurie Parks wrote it, but Zainab Jah from Eclipsed, and I think it was Eclipsed, yeah. And Kevin Mambo from the play about
we
Bella.
Need a quick...
Okay, anyway, in this story, she's brutalized, she's put in a circus, she has a little bit of respite by a white doctor who she loves, but who really is just looking forward to the day when he can boil her body and use her bones to put on display. A
Speaking
horrible,
of concentration
horrible story.
camps.
Yes,
Yeah.
done with humor and just because Suzanne.
And that connects to
because
Bella.
Suzanne Glory Parks is such a genius, and it connects to Bella, which was totally unintentional, because this is also a buxom young lady with a very big derriere, make believe. She's called I can't think of her name, but there's a song in the show that's called a Big Booty Tupelo Gal, and that's Bella. Her name is Bella, and this is a fun show. She has dreams. In her dreams, she meets a cowboy, and the cowboy runs off with a lady on the train, and she's trying to get to her Buffalo Soldier guy, and she meets a Pullman porter, and she has adventures, and it's all musical.
So, and this is a fun play, a comedy?
And it's a comedy, and she also winds up in a circus.
And your conclusion?
Well, at one point when she's in the circus, she runs away because she doesn't, she's not trapped the way poor Venus is. And my conclusion was I had a great time. It was it's an American tall tale, absolutely charming. Venus was not meant to be fun. It wasn't, but it was beautifully done. I would give each of them 4.5 for very different reasons. Brilliantly done.
Okay. I'm going to talk about 0 Hour. And this is a one-man show written and starring by Jim Brochu, I think it's pronounced, directed by Piper Laurie. It's been off Broadway.
His name is Brochu.
I'm sorry?
Brochu,
excuse me. Brochu.
I believe.
And this is a one-man show, which, as I said, he wrote and performed based on the life of Zero Mostel. And he does an amazingly accurate, both visually and audibly, imitation or tribute to Mostel. Goes by his life. Mostel, of course, is probably best known for Fiddler on the Roof. Funny thing happened on the way to the Forum. And the producers, which we find out he didn't like because he felt he looked too fat. And apparently the producers only later became a cult classic. Mostel died in the mid-'70s. He had just done a revival of Fiddler, which I saw. He was about to do a updated version of The Merchant of Venice called The Merchant. Loved it. Enjoyed it. Well done.
Just so you know, and I don't know whether you know Jim Brochu or not, but I've met him. He's a Southern boy. He's got an accent thick enough to cut with a knife. You wouldn't know it from the play. That's acting. That's acting.
You totally believe that is Zero Mostel. I learned several things about him. Wish I could go into more detail.
Which you would give us, and what kind of vote would you give
I
us?
would say like 3.5 on this. The show is running off Broadway not for much longer, but he tends to come and go with it, and he tends to tour with it.
It's a revival of the show that he's already done.
So look out for it. And that is our show for this afternoon.
And from a hot, sweltery afternoon.
Yes.
Thank you, Miriam, for being here.
Thank you, Play That Goes Wrong for the fans.
Thank you, New York, for not walking in front of our camera.
And when you go to Times Square, look for Leslie and me, us too.
At the table.
On the aisle.